Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Gutierrez. I am the Administrative Manager of Teacher Education at the Longy School of Music, and we're so grateful that you are with us here tonight. We are recording this session, but we will stop prior to the Q&A portion at the end. So welcome to Changemakers, which is our free short professional development series for you K-12 music educators. The series is focused on interactive workshops that spotlight student-centered classrooms as well as culturally responsive teaching. For those of you interested in a professional development certificate for PDP points, there will be a QR code at the end and a link shared in the chat at the end of the session tonight. This evening, we have Stefano Marchese joining us for his session entitled Empowering Student Engagement and Facilitation Through Music Making. Stefano is an award-winning Italian singer-songwriter and educator. He teaches at Berklee College of Music and collaborates with the University of Massachusetts Amherst. A teaching artist at Eliot K-8 Innovation School, he presents at international music education conferences and publishes work on culturally responsive teaching and music technology. The workshop today will last about 25 or 30 minutes. And then we'll have some time afterward for the Q&A mentioned before about our facilitators' work, or if you have any questions about Longy School of Music, Master Music Education programs, and I'd be happy to answer those. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Stefano. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. Excited to be back at Longy and virtually. So this is awesome, and I'm very excited to meet you all. I see some familiar faces, and it will be great to meet you in this context. So as Michael said, yes, I'm Italian. I put some pictures and logos just to briefly tell you a little bit about me. I'm Italian. I came in the States because I won a scholarship for Berklee back in the days, few years ago. I'm a performing artist, and this is the logo of my band. My recent project, this was my last concert in Italy, actually. I collaborated with Bobby McFerrin. I toured with him. And then this is my wonderful students at the Eliot for the end of the school year show. And this is the choir. So I teach at the Eliot also, which is a K-8 Innovation School in the Boston Public School District. I collaborate with NAMPAC, which is a North End Music and Performing Arts Center, as an artistic director of Jazz in the Park. And all this while I keep studying, so I'm close to to start my dissertation work for my PhD at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, while also, of course, teaching at the Eliot and at Berklee. So tonight, this is what we're going to do. We'll talk about engagement and identity, the power of project-based learning. And of course, I'm going to share my experience with you, and I would like to hear your experience then after the presentation and see how what I'm going to present today relates or connects to what you do, what you can do in your environment. I will present you a model. We'll reflect on a couple of things and how this model can be applicable in many different contexts. And of course, we're going to open then the floor for questions. So we should be able to, by the end of this presentation, to reflect on the importance of purposeful engagement and how that is connected to, of course, PBL, to project-based learning, and how that, of course, is deeply connected to who are the students who are in front of us, so their identities, and so how that connects to culturally responsive teaching. I will present you a model that embraces critical thinking and, of course, share with you a couple of strategies on how to implement that. I want to start with this quote by Robert Stenberg that says, "The major factor in whether people achieve expertise is not some fixed prior ability, but purposeful engagement." And this was for me a discovery, if you want, if you will. I come from a country that, of course, provides public education to all, from kindergarten all the way up to university and higher education. But for some reason, I grew up in a fixed mindset. So, in other words, if you're like if you have it, like if you're talented, you can do it. If you're not talented, you better do something else. Well, actually, that is not the case. We can always learn as long as we are engaged in what we learn. So, of course, I think here it's important to stop a second and reflect on these two words, purpose and engagement. Purpose is the reason why we do something. And engagement is connected somehow to our emotions or our commitment to do what we do or to learn what we want to learn. Now, this is very important because in my experience at the Eliot, and of course also in higher education at Berklee, engagement is at the base of it. And when we started our journey at the Eliot K-8 Innovation School on project-based learning, the whole idea was based on the future of work that, of course, is tied into future of learning, right? So we start looking at data. This is a Gallup poll, and we noticed that engagement start decreasing from fifth grade. And so, of course, we want to figure out why this happens. And I think that a very important piece is the fact that we should look at the student as a complex, a complex human being, right? As we are complex, and of course, some of our aspects can be visible, but many, and probably the great majority of them, are not visible to others. And I'm referring this to Edward T. Hall iceberg model, where we see just some of the aspects, some of the elements of someone's identity, but the great majority is, of course, hidden, right? Or as we can refer to here, is in our deep culture. So, of course, when we have a student entering our room, the first thing we have to do is to dive deep. So, figuring out ways in which we can learn more about our students, because of course we always have to remember that that education comes from ex ducere, which is not pushing things in their brain, but just really pulling things out from what they already know, of course, making connections. So there are a couple of problems that in my experience at the Eliot, I had to face, and collaboratively with my colleagues, we had to reflect on. And this is based on these three elements that you see: the future of work, identity, and engagement. So starting from what we already talked about, engagement. So we have seen that 74% of students in grade 5 are engaged in learning, but 34% of the students in grade 12 are engaged in learning. So of course, there's a big decrease from 5th grade all the way to 12th grade. Identity, the identity piece. Now, these are data from 2022. So 58.9% of the population is non-Hispanic white, but by 2060, 33% will be non-Hispanic white. So of course, it will be a big shift in our population. And of course, this has to be taken into consideration as we develop, of course, our praxis. And the third piece is the future of work. So 65%, and this is probably the thing that I found more interesting than anything else. So 65% of children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in completely new jobs, types that don't exist today. I think this is interesting. And I always wondered, like, okay, but what is the connection to music? Music has been around forever. Well, yes, but in many different shapes and forms. And if we think, for example, I love music technology. If we think about MIDI, for example, or music production intended as music creation through music technology, well, we can see how, many things have changed in the last few years, right? And so, and the application of technology in music. This is what then I come up with. My school, again, is a project-based school. And so I see students I don't see them once a week, but I see them in blocks of 15 days, in cycles of 15 days. So I see them for 15 days straight, and then I see the next class for the 15 days, and then another class, and then eventually I go back to the first class. So I see them for a total of 36 to more, 45 lessons throughout the school year, and at times much more actually. And so the project I developed were based on these topics. So music production, choir became a project-based learning, scoring for animation, string ensemble, podcasting, guitar ensemble, steel drum ensemble, Latin percussion, ukulele. So anything, probably anything that we're teaching in general music became for me a project-based. And this is how it was applied in my schedule. So there was, of course, as you can see, my schedule is a rotation schedule. So I see students for 15 days, and then I go to the next cycle, and then eventually I go back to, I don't know, here you can see 6S. 6S comes back here and then comes back here again. So I see them for 3 cycles. And every time I see them, I do something different. So every time, for every cycle, I change topic. And of course, throughout these projects, they have to develop skills. So they had to transfer the skills they acquired in music education already. What I want you to focus on, and the project I want to show with you today, is something called acceleration, the acceleration project, which was inserted in my schedule right here at 9:20 in the morning. And this was actually a class that I would be able to see every day for the whole entire school year. And this, again, is an innovation school, so we're trying things out. We try we test new things, and I love it because being, in research in music education, I can get to try not only what previous researchers did, but also my ideas. And so I had an idea, which I figured was in action an original idea someone else before me did, which is opening up the music room, and this is my music room, to the students. And so they can do in that block, they can do anything they wanted. And of course, I was in a room ready to help them with whatever they needed. And of course, they ask me questions that I try not to answer, and we have here Ms. Woon that can testify that for you later on. So this sounds crazy, and this might look like this for many of us. Like, imagine that you're leaving your music room in the hands of middle schoolers. That could be challenging. But what turned to be was something very interesting. Of course, I read what Lucy Green wrote, How Popular Musicians Learn, and this actually was a work that Lucy Green published in 2002, 2004, sorry, not 24. This was a few years ago. But basically, this model is based on these 5 aspects. So students choose their own music, they learn to play instruments, and of course, that's what they end up doing with all those instruments in the room by year. They work independently, and so the teacher had more the role of a facilitator, and they work with friends, of course. It is an idiosyncratic way of learning, if you will, because everyone would do things differently at their own pace. And what I have seen is that they were using all the skills that they had available. So listening, composing, performing, improvising, all at once. So how this can be applied in school? Well, of course, let me give you a context. I teach in middle school, so this can work in secondary schools. The students had to choose their own music. They choose their own friendships groups, of course, choose their own instruments, and eventually they can switch instruments throughout this process. They can pick a song, or they have to agree to play a song, and learn by ear, which can be challenging for some. The tools I used to assess and to get data to show the administrators that this actually was working of course, was observation. So I was observing the students. I asked the students to self-assess. And there were times where, of course, I have to intervene and adjust and reflect with them. And I'll show you what I did. But first, I want to show you what the students did in the class. So this is how it looked like. Here you can see 3 students, and I just want to give a little bit of context. All 3 of them joined this class, which was an elective for them, as piano players. And as you can see, one is the bass, the other one is in front of a computer. So they're basically trying to learn the bass, and I'm making the video. I'm not teaching them how to figure that out.
USA, then everybody be surfing like California, yay.
So here they're reviewing like the chord changes. When do they have to change chords? And I found this is interesting. Check it out. So here's the student that is trying to figure out where the notes are on the bass.
Here, get the piano. We can. Maybe this thing is out of tune as well.
No, that's
Try this. Yeah, that's a different note.
Okay, so they're learning that is C on the bass, right? And they learned by transfer that skill. They know piano, of course, they can play hit C, and it was trying to figure out where C was. Now, I just want to pause a second. This is a student that plays piano that is actually teaching this student with a blue shirt to play bass. Now, the same student, few months after, you will see with the stick, is now playing drums in the meantime. So he played bass on that tune. Now he's playing drums on a different tune.
Thomas, that was Yes, it is. What do you mean? Yes.
No, it's not. That's like it doesn't go. It doesn't write down like how you guys are. No, look, listen.
Made her on my way. I made her on my way to Chicago.
It got higher. And Thomas is putting it back down. No.
I did not know how to play.
So they're learning to play by ear. That's exactly what you see. Now in this, I'm just going to show you this frame here. The same student that was playing bass and drums now is actually sampling drums. So he's recording MIDI using the keyboard. And so it recorded this drum set here, this cycle is this MIDI samples is cycling while he's playing chords on top of it. So of course these are all students in higher grades. Of course I teach K-8, so these are students in 7th and 8th grade that have been with me a few years, and of course they study music production and they know how to deal with the DAW. During the day, the students, right at the beginning or at the end, they will gather to decide what is it that they wanted to work on. And of course, this is not something that I suggested them. This was spontaneous. And of course, I gave some suggestions on how to talk to each other and find a way to agree. But this was something that they decided to do. A few months after, this is what it became. So we started with just 5 students that selected this ensemble, and later on we end up with more than 20 students. And we asked some of the students in the string ensemble to join this band, and so became a larger contemporary pop ensemble where they were playing, different types of songs. Like in this case, This Is Lovely by Billie Eilish. And of course, I'm conducting just because to help out the strings, but they this side of the room do not need me. So I want to show you now how I got the data, and I want to show you what is it that the students were looking at. I need to change, sorry, give me just one second. Okay. Here we go. So this is how I would collect data. I would be in a corner of the room observing and writing everything I hear or everything I see. And sometimes could be someone talking about a ballet show that they went the night before, or it could be someone asking questions to each other. And so the students at the end of the lesson have to assess my observation, the things that I've observed. And they're actually pretty good at it. They're pretty quick. So of course they found their name and they say, oh, here I was orange, I was red, I was blue. What are these things? Why we use these different colors? Well, simply to show if they're green means that they made some progress. If they're orange, they're working on it. And in red, they were either disengaged or they felt that they were struggling or they were not making any progress. So just want to quickly show you how we go from this bar, this red bar being high, to completely disappearing. Of course, there's a lot of orange, so they're working on things, but at the same time, you can see how they feel they're progressing, they're doing things. And so this is probably the best way for me to show that this is working, or at least it's working for the students. Now, of course, again, this is just a model, and I applied this model just to this ensemble that I end up calling pop rock ensemble. But this idea of observing and facilitating rather than giving them all the knowledge they need, all the information they need to get where they want to get, is based also on critical thinking. So here you can see how, if we look at this, at Bloom's taxonomy, I mean, this is how I interpret all these 6 different steps. So remembering and understanding for me is a way to connect culture responsive teaching strategies here in a way that I can learn, I can get to know the students and learn from them. The critical thinking part, which is what I'm going to show you in a second, is having the students trying to analyze it or trying to find a solution. And then creating and evaluating is more the growth mindset aspect of it. Of course, we will need to unpack all this, but culture responsive teaching is basically contributing to making my space, so the music room space, a third space, so a space where there's cross-cultural cross-pollination. So there's cultural cross-pollination when the students can learn from each other, they can exchange their idea, and also, why not, share their identity through music. For the critical thinking part, while they were trying to learn their instruments, or they're trying to figure out how to transcribe or play their parts, or the parts of the songs that they selected, while working with each other, there was a lot of reflecting or experimenting or investigating. So this is actually a model that we created for the students, but also for us as teachers, to facilitate critical thinking. And it's based on 4 aspects, which is investigation, experimentation, reflection, and feedback. And the students have to go through it, and they're actually trained across the board through all the enrichment teachers to go through these processes. So investigation is I actively explore and brainstorm resources I need. So in that case of the student playing bass was, okay, I know piano, and so I'm going to use a chord chart to know what the chords are. I do not know where the notes are on the bass, but I can match it. So I'm using what I know and making these connections. The experimentation piece, I challenged myself to have a variety of ideas. In that case I challenged myself to try new things, so to try the bass, and maybe then go try a drum set, or go try a cello, any instrument they have interest and access to. The reflection piece, and this is probably, at least in my opinion, one of the most important pieces, which is I consider what works and doesn't work and think of way to adjust. Often, students struggle tracking their progress. And I think reflecting on what is it that is working first before pointing the fingers at all the things that you need to work on, I think it's fundamental. And then maybe focusing on one thing at a time to adjust, to tweak. And then the last piece, of course, is modeling, how to share feedback, constructive feedback, but also fostering, this environment where students feel okay in receiving feedback and share feedback. And then now we're at the top of the Bloom taxonomy, which is the growth mindset. And this is very important. I think it's important for me as performer, but also as instructor. I grew up in an environment where, as I mentioned before, either you got it or you can do something else where you're good at. Well, I think we can learn things. And this is a model that you can find online. And this is actually, I found it very useful. It's interesting because fixed and growth mindset is not something that you either have or you don't have. Otherwise, it would be, an oxymoron. But it's behaviors or it's places in our life we can hop from one side. We can feel in one certain thing that we're on the fixed mindset side, or in other moments we're on the growth mindset side, but always knowing that there is another way to do things. So, for example, in the fixed mindset, challenges is something that people tend to avoid. Instead, the growth mindset, a challenge is an opportunity to grow. Well, it's easy to say it to the students, but then of course this applies to us as well as educators. Success of others, for example, this is something that I struggle with. When I see someone that come or started college with me and then already released an album and I'm still finishing college, I was frustrated and say, "How come I'm not there yet?" Well, if in a growth mindset, the success of others is also a lesson. So it's an opportunity to study what is it that these people did to get where you want to be. And this is something that I actually teach at Berklee all the time to my students, especially in the artist entrepreneurs class. When students need to find their competitors, I don't know, someone wants to be the next Beyonce. Okay, great. So study what is it that Beyonce did step by step, right? So, and what were the lessons that you can learn from the success of this artist? So, of course, this is an important part for us. Even when it gets to practicing, right, or putting effort into something. In a fixed mindset, effort, like figure, means you're not smart or talented. Or if you were, you wouldn't need to practice, or you wouldn't need to put all this effort in something. In a growth mindset, instead, effort is what makes you smarter, is what makes you talented. So all the students that you've seen in the video at the beginning, they came in as piano players. They didn't know how to play bass, drums, or cello. They put effort in it, but because they were engaged and they really wanted to do it. And of course, the peer part, the peer connection was super, super important.